Lewis Hamilton has a huge amount of demands for the Ferrari Formula One team with changes he wants made for next year's 2026 Ferrari car. These come after having spent now a whole half season with Ferrari, getting to understand the characteristics and the style from which he's had with regards to the SF25. And it seems there's a huge list of changes he wants made for next season. Some of these are what he likes to describe as putting his own DNA within the Ferrari car as a whole. Now, what exactly does it mean by putting your DNA or putting DNA into an F1 car? Well, if you look back through every regulation cycle we've gone through, some of the most successful teams in these periods have certain characteristics which have led them to dominate a certain generation. Now, those could be described as DNA traits, the positive aspects of a car which don't change from year on year. They are retained. So, for example, during Red Bull's initial period of domination in the early 2010s, they had the exhaust blown diffuser. For Mercedes at the beginning of the hybrid era, the DNA, you would say, came from having such a dominant engine initially and just generally improving upon the car's aerodynamics as a result of that huge gap. And then in this current regulation cycle, you would have to say Red Bull were very much the leaders and pioneers of the certain avenue from which all Formula One teams have kind of converged down to this point in time. This is what is known as DNA. And every Formula One car and team chooses a certain development path to go down. And there are many multitude of avenues from a regulation cycle beginning from which to research and then decide to go down. Now, within these avenues that every team, including Ferrari, choose to go down, there is, of course, that DNA structure that comes into play, and these don't change the overall end goals that a team sets. For example, the downforce points, the load points, the overall lap time you're looking to get out of the initial package in 2026. But the characteristics, the handling performance of the car, what the feedback from the steering wheel, for example, gives you, these are the kind of tools from which the DNA can help improve upon the overall performance of the car, just to make the drivers more comfortable and able to extract performance out of that chosen design avenue. And for Lewis Hamilton and his time in Ferrari thus far, I can give you a couple that Hamilton specifically has asked to have changed for next season. These are to do with two specific areas. One, the power steering of the Ferrari car for next season, but even more importantly than that is the actual engine, the engine settings, the brake migration, all of these key important areas from which Ferrari can easily tweak for next season. For example, Hamilton has pointed out problems with the brakes and engine braking, which he finds far too aggressive on the Ferrari car. And of course, I believe Hamilton will say, from his experience with Mercedes, if we get it more in line with the way Mercedes introduced kind of the engine braking side of things with regards to their settings, he's going to have a smoother, a more easier time extracting the maximum out of himself and the machine together in harmony. So these are the things when we talk about DNA that is more akin and more personal to a driver. And these are the settings from which a driver wants to make changes to. And it could just be the engine braking doesn't have the settings Hamilton would like. And therefore, you just need to introduce that into the overall pool of available tools to Hamilton. Whereas before, the two previous drivers may have had certain engine braking settings that they've both been very happy with. That is not the case, quite obviously. And it's the same with the brakes. I think, as we all know, Hamilton has come from Mercedes to Ferrari and he's got to use Brembo brakes, when maybe he would rather prefer to still be on the carbon industry, even though publicly he stated he doesn't want it. Or maybe it is the fact he is going to stick with the Brembo brakes, but they're going to ask them to kind of design and create them in a certain way which is quite different from what they've been used to doing. Those are the things which we would call stamping your DNA on a car. It isn't making wholesale changes to the way in which a team designs and builds a car to get to the first point to the final point in terms of downforce and load points. It is more the characteristics in terms of handling and what we've been just discussing, which is what more of a DNA structure is from. So those are some of the DNA changes Hamilton would like made on the Ferrari cars moving forward. Now, more of the structural side of things and the things which are more broader, which both Hamilton and Leclerc feel need to be changed, also includes the front suspension and the settings and the design through which they've made them. Now, I don't specifically have too much information with regards to what Hamilton and Leclerc are struggling with the front suspension. It is maybe something to do with the rear suspension, which they have now been trialing out tomorrow and Thursday. And if the rear suspension helps kind of mitigate the front suspension issue, then of course that helps the drivers get more out of the car in terms of performance and lap time. So again, it's in terms of DNA, it's more about the flexibility within how you want a car designed. So you have more tools at your disposal to change settings to get a better balance, a better feel out of the car. And it's not about dictating the direction from which you want to design a car around a certain choice in terms of what path you want to go down, particularly when we have a new set of regulations. I'm sure there's multiple paths and branches every team has found and has been testing in the wind tunnel, and then they've all chosen one particular avenue from which to go down. And Ferrari have chosen one, and within that is all about making sure the tools available to the driver to extract that performance from going down that particular avenue is available to them. Having more tools to play with to get better feelings, to get better feedback, to get better engine braking, to get better kind of traction as well. And maybe the engine deliverability when it comes to kind of throttle input. Maybe it's a bit too twitchy currently with the amount of torque coming out of the engine when going on the gas, and that's a little bit of the kind of traction issue going on. These are the things we're talking about with DNA. Other things they want solved for next year is just the high-speed cornering issues Hamilton has had with this complete error, and it's more the instability at corner entry. Now, I believe, and I've said this for many years now across these videos of mine, it is all about this particular error. I just feel Hamilton struggles with it, and thankfully for him it's going away, and it's kind of like a reset. And these traits from which there is always an instability on corner entry in high speed is gonna evaporate, and he can kind of maybe fine-tune his driving style more to something he was akin and more successful with before this error. And this is the same thing with regards to also the slow speed problems Ferrari have with their front of the car as well, where we know the characteristics of the car unfortunately induce a lot of understeer, particularly if it is really elongated corner. So for example, Hungary could maybe be a little bit of a problem for the car. But that is just my particular take on it. It may not be the case, particularly with a new floor and rear suspension probably completely working perfectly for the team when they go there. But these are the things and the changes and demands Hamilton, that has now had a lot of time within the Ferrari camp, has come to learn about and wish to have changed for 26 and beyond. And he believes these changes, once implemented, are going to help not only himself, obviously, but also Leclerc and the team moving forward to create a much more competitive package for them all to attack on both the drivers and constructors championships moving forward.